All right, we move on to the other one. That's the HEMP, high high altitude electromagnetic pulse. Okay, lots of books have been written on this. There's many things out there on it that have been talked about for years. We're talking about setting off nuclear weapons about 2 to 300 miles above the U.S. And if it's going to be done by a state actor, they're probably going to put two or three of them up there just to be sure it all works right. And it just blankets this country, North America, with a pulse of energy that will destroy all of the computer equipment, all the chips that are in the equipment. All those antennas we talked about for the geomagnetic storms is well, they're out there, all right. Millions of miles of them in this country. Picks up that surge of electricity and it burns up a lot of things, destroys equipment. And this is worse than the geomagnetic storm because it takes out another set of equipment. We burn up some of the big equipment, but now we take all the chips and things, not all of them, but enough of them that we can't operate, we can't function. So we are really shut down. Of course, many people are familiar with the book 1 Second After. That's about that. There's others written on that, theorizing about what it would be like. Now, if you wanted something that's a little closer to not being just a theory, you read the report on the commission to assess, the threat to the United States from an EMP attack. Just what you do is you take that information in that book, you consider 1 second after, but you also consider that the geomagnetic storm is going to do the same kind of a thing. We're going to have the same results. If you have a coordinated attack that's big enough to really shut down the power grid and take it out of commission for months, years, it's going to be the same end result. We shut everything down and we have all the same problems. And that report estimates that it's devastating. It is cataclysmic. Those words are used, which you don't usually see in government reports. And the estimate is that if it is successfully pulled off, this is one of those things you don't want to be successful, but if it's really done in a major way that takes out the power grid and all the things connected to it, 80% of the population dies in the first year due to violent starvation and disease. Now, 1 second after is not how to protect yourself from that, but what it does, it puts a human face on the effects to a community, to a nation. If that occurs, it's well worth reading. And I know for some people there's a little bit of language, and there's not as bad as some of the books, but there's a little bit of language because there are going to be people upset. And I know Navy speak, and every now and then I speak a little Navy in here. Not that I spoke a lot of that in the Navy, but I was around it. And it just kind of comes out because I have no idea why it makes you feel better, but boy, you're upset, and so you speak it. And there'll be people around you doing that. So I tell people that if you're not too tender on it, go ahead and read it. It's not too bad about that because it'll give you a really good picture of what we might be up against. And then you can read the other three books, two books. There's one more coming in this series. It was a trilogy, but he's going to add one more in there. They're worth reading to look at some of the political and other effects that you may go through trying to rebuild this country or get back to where we're something that we used to be. So HEMP is about loss of the power grid in a very major way. And the time to recover is not in your lifetime, not in your children's lifetime, back to full recovery. Will everybody be without power? Probably not. But it's going to be very little isolated power in places unless you've made provisions. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about because you don't have to be completely without power, but you're going to have to decide what it is that you can, should do, afford to do, and do it. And there's things you can do for only under $100. You can do some things that really make a difference. And then you spend $150, then 200, and you go up to maybe a few $1,000s. I'm not talking about the big systems on the roof that power your whole house. I'm not in favor of whole house powering your system, and I'll explain that why at another time. But do you need some power? Absolutely. You need some power. We'll talk about that in the future class. So anyway, this is where I started, as I made the point, back in cold weather and winter. It was all about that. But I had to talk about all these other things, the attitude, water, clothing, sanitation, nutrition. It morphed into teaching about in the 1990s about these 9 areas up until 2022. And then my, change in my focus in this is away from that and in just those 9, focusing on the power grid, because if you're ready to deal with loss of power grid, you're really taking care of everything, and it will involve all these nine still and all the subparts within them. And then understand base cause. You want to understand what I've been talking about here so you can do a little bit of analysis, and it'll give you an idea of how serious this is and whether you can expect power back in your lifetime or not. And if you can't, if it's not going to come back in your lifetime, get over it. That part of this is when you have an understanding of what can happen, and you really, I'll just say, buy into the fact that could happen, and you're making provisions as best you can to deal with it. When it does occur, you're going to go like, oh, nuts. This is not going to be fun, but I do have a plan of action and I will move forward. What is going to happen? The people are unprepared for this, totally unprepared. That's why I want to educate as many people as I can, and why I'm reaching out and will be doing more reaching out in the future to get to people so at least they have an idea this could happen. And if they're like, okay, when it happens, it won't be that big of a surprise. Maybe I should get an extra flashlight or something. Well, that'll help a little bit. But if we can get more people prepared, then we will not have as much suicide, because I will talk about that. This is going to be catastrophic for people. That'll be a little later class. The emotional, mental effects of this for the people that are unprepared, and you're going to have to deal with it. That's what it comes down to. This is a harsh subject, but I'm just going to be blunt and bottom line with people. If you want to look at something not quite as tough as this one, go. Be sure you watch that video that I told you about on Vimeo. We'll get to that in just a minute. Show a little more about that. You need these practical, realistic, affordable answers that'll fit you in these 6 areas. Understand the base cause: summer, what climate, winter, rural, city. Be ready to deal with it. It's going to be these 9 areas you're going to be dealing with. I'll talk about them. And since there's many causes, and we don't necessarily have to have the direct attack. Some of these other things I mentioned could take out our power grid. But there's this domino effect that as you start losing pieces of it, it affects the economy and people being able to go to work and drive their cars and deliver fuel and fly and whatever it is here. It kind of ripples through the society and it can really get shut down. So in this foundation area, and I'll come back to this because I already mentioned that, what's the foundation for survival? I see a lot of people here. I recognize you've seen this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but we'll come back and do it and publish it in here. The law of provident living, most important of all the laws in here. Well, it is about your spiritual foundation. It's about your attitude. It's about the knowledge that you have. It's about the stuff that you get, how and why you get the stuff you have, and then you understand that how these things link together, because ultimately it's about the attitude and outlook is going to help you get through. And by getting these things in place with that spiritual foundation and having a knowledge of how and why things work and what occurred and what can I do to protect myself now, how do I respond to it, and you put in supply some of the stuff and things that you need, that affects your attitude in a very positive way, because you now can have a plan of action. And when you have a plan of action, when you know that you can do something, you're able to move forward and accomplish things. The people are going to be completely flat-footed in this thing, and it's going to come from left field and not have a clue. Some of them, it's going to be devastating. So that's why we'll talk about that in the future. It isn't just about stuff. It's about what's in your head and heart. Okay, my mission to reach and teach as many people as possible about some of these key things. That's what I'm all about. You can go to my website. I talk about that, and there's things that you can see and do. There's lots of free classes on there, things you can download, things that you can watch, that you can stream, other things that I link to off of my website in there. But this website, it's got a lot of information in it, and there's more that's coming, and I'm confident I have some help coming pretty soon that's going to let this get a lot better. In fact, one of my goals has been to completely rebuild the thing from the ground up to be more education friendly and easy to get at. But right now it is as it is. And if these other things don't happen, I'll just keep doing what I do as best I can. Lots of free things there, but go to that YouTube link that you'll find on there. So you can link over to my YouTube channel, and then you can watch some of these other things. There is this subscription library. I appreciate people on here. I know that are members of that. Thank you very much. That $5.99 a month helps pay for some of what I'm doing in here and some of the software that I rent and pay for the bandwidth and what have you. That's what's doing it. And so I appreciate that. And there's some people I know that are on here that maybe they're not even going into that members library and looking at things, although it's there for you. and I'm going to add more, but thank you for supporting the work. I do appreciate that. Now, get to this published on Vimeo, Grid Down, Power Up. It is very important, but it has two major shortcomings. I've already alluded to them. Now, one of them is what they do tell you to do is please write your congressman, please write the power companies, any influencer that you can. Also, spread this video around, get as many people active in demanding that there are things that are done that could protect this entire system. Now, I'm going to tell you what one of the shortcomings is. One of the shortcomings is now this is a negative. I get a little. I'm not negative. I'm a realist. I'm trained in science, technology, engineering. I've been around for a long time. I've been studying these things, looking at them, and looking at human nature and what have you. And I'll tell you, one of the shortcomings of this is, and that there are people that want us out of the way, meaning this country out of the way, not necessarily you individually, but shut down this country and our ability to respond and do things. They want us out of the way. So if they were to see us getting very serious about this, our government has now passed the bills and they've earmarked the $100 billion it'd take to do that, and they put in a power grid protection czar, and they see that coming, they're likely to pull the plug. I think we're too late. I don't say that to say we shouldn't try, because we should, because maybe, because all the people that are trying to protect things, maybe we can get it done so that doesn't happen. I would hope and pray that's the case, but just realize we need to do that. Since I'm on the power grid in our city, I've been trying to do some things. I'm going to do a little more because I found some other resources I can use to take to our city council and see if I can't come up some ways to at least protect our little part of this country and our power grid, because it would be easy to protect. It probably costs, I don't know, $10,000 or $15,000. Heck, if I had the money, I'd pay for it to do it. And what if it's $20,000? It'd be worth it in the long run. I would do that, but I can't do that yet. Maybe I can someday. Hey, if we get enough subscribers to my system, I can do that. Go tell them. Well, never mind. Anyway, that's one of the shortcomings, that we may not have time to do that. The other shortcoming is that they tell you what to do. Please do that. Get in contact. The other thing is, what can you be doing as an individual to protect your household the way it is? They don't give any solutions. That's what I'm going to be doing, as trying to analyze this thing and help you understand what you should be doing. And I know there's people on this call that may be like, I don't have $10,000 to do it. I'm one of those people. I don't have the $10,000 or the $5,000 or the $500 to put more into what I've done already. I don't have it. But I have done what I can do for a few dozens of dollars that will make a difference. And I've got some things coming that I can do a little bit more. So I'll teach about those things. Now, if you have the $5,000 or $10,000 to do some of the things I suggest, please do it. Do it right away. When we get into that class, here's how you can have some power. Plus, of course, you need to be doing the other things, the food and the water and the sanitation, all those 9 areas. But a little bit of power is really, really important for you to have. And depending on, as you analyze it, there are some people it may be a life and death thing to have a certain amount of power. We'll analyze that, but they don't give you any things in that video right there. So I'll be talking about that. So anyway, go to my website, listen to these two right here, but I'll say this is more important because they do a beautiful job, and it's something you'll be proud to send to people and watch this. But if you need some more, back up on it, use these here also. Those are out there on YouTube that I might catch some more people that'll come in and join my system. Okay, my job, as I've mentioned, is to get the monkey off my back and onto yours. You're either going to do something or you're not, and that's okay. And I'll help you do the best you possibly can from where you are, because that's what I'm having to do. I'm doing, here's my 21-word lecture on success. Do the best you can with what you have from where you are, all in complete integrity, and do it now. It isn't like you can do everything. It's do your best and keep doing it. And by the way, make some choices, like turn off some things that you really don't need, which I've done. And there's some other things I'm trying to turn off so I can spend some money in some other areas, plus go create some more income on it. So that's what we do. Go to my website, get a lot of these things, bring other people there, join. I appreciate you very much. Now, let's go to a little time of Q&A that we have. You're welcome to unmute. I'll watch for that, or raise your hand. I'd like to hear what you have to say. And you can, one of the other things I put out in the newsletter is if you have any suggestions on some other classes or things to cover here, please bring them up. I haven't thought of everything. I'm thinking about what do I know that I need to do and teach about. So I'm doing that, but you can give me other ideas and suggestions. Send them an email, bring them to Saturday morning, or speak them right here. All right. The time is yours. And thank you for letting me rant and rave for a minute here. Of course, I know sometimes when I've given live classes and I can see people out there in the audience, I've said some things and I see they got these big eyes going like, oh my heck. Well, if it's there, raise your objections, ask your questions. Let me help any way I can in these future classes. I will do my best to help you get through this if you want to. And if I have some people say, well, if it's going to be the EMP or cyber attack or it's going to be that bad losing our power grid, I just soon be done. I've lived a good long life and I'm done with it and it's okay. And that's okay. If some people are there, well, I'm not going to fault you for that because when you showed up in this life, it was a fatal process, the beginning of it. Questions, comments, thoughts, complaints?
Jim,
Yes.
I've noticed many things about where you go down into the ground. What do you call that underneath your house?
Well, you mean the
I can't
basement?
think of it. I can't think of it right now. It's a you
Hey,
know,
you
where you store your food.
okay? Yeah, in the root cellar, in the
Yeah, the root cellar.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Hey, I'm
that's
glad
one
to
of the.
see somebody has the same problem I do with words and memory.
Yeah, well, the root cellars are the best thing to do right away when the power goes out because the ground is always much colder down there, and that's where they used to store all their food.
All right.
When they had a garden, they stored in the side of the hill, or just make a root cellar and pile dirt on, make it with some old timber or wood or any tree that you chop down or whatever, and then just put plastic over it and then pile about 2-3 feet of dirt over it. And that makes a very good root cellar to store your food and cold water down in there because that's the way the people used to live before they had electricity. And they stored all their food in there and they stored their, um, they had a well that they would dig water, dig and have water out of and everything like that. That's one of the basic things you can do. Dig a root cellar and make it so where you can have it on an incline of a hill that you have or know of or whatever, and you can hide it too so that you can store your food in there and other people can't see it and know that it's there. But that's one real important thing to do.
It is. There's so many. As a matter of fact, if you go, one of the things that's great about YouTube, I mean, I love what's on YouTube and some of these other channels where people can publish, is that you can get a lot of ideas in there. And one problem is there's so much to watch out there that it's hard to then get any work done because you can just watch and watch and watch things. But some of the people that are the homesteaders and off grid, and some of them are doing it without any or very little electricity. You ought to be watching what some of them are doing. Get some ideas. Now, you're not. I'm not suggesting you have to go homestead, but you can get some skills and ideas from those people that will be very, very useful for you to have and know. And you'll see some techniques and ideas. And what it'll do by watching some of those people, because they're already living that lifestyle of little or no utilities. Now they've prepared themselves to do that. It just simply means, well, you could do that too, as much as you could possibly do. So yes, you should do that. Lots of things. Good idea that you had there, Leroy. Appreciate that. Any other ideas, thoughts, or questions that people have? Okay, and if you don't have your chat open, I'll just read this. Why do you need some power if you have a supply of fuel for cooking? Live in a mild climate and aren't dependent on medical reasons. I also have a solar oven and solar lighting if required. Good question, good comment. Now, there's some things, depending on what you're going to be dealing with. my basement's kind of cool down here sometimes, and I'm kind of heated up, so we'll dump a little heat out the head here. And I'll go through that when we get to that class of why I think it's very important to have some power. Now, I have some tools that I want to be able to run. I have some battery powered, some good lithium battery powered tools that if I need to drill a hole or I need to cut off a board to repair and maintain, that I want some power so I can charge those up. Because now I have brace and bit and I have hand saws and all those things. Yes, I'm prepared to go back to do it the other way. But boy, I'll tell you what, it takes me 15 seconds to shoot a hole with one of those hole shooters. That would take me, 15 minutes to crank through with a brace and bit. So there's some maintenance things that you would want to do and you will need to do that would be really, really important. So I want some power to do that. There's also some things you might say, well, okay, if I want to grind some wheat or things like that. And by the way, I have a little thing on that because what if you do have a grinder? There may be some other things that you can do if you have just a hand one. I'll do a little comparison on that. There's a lot of things you can do by hand, but boy, a little bit of power to run some tools. A blender, yeah, I can stir it by hand. But there's some things I can't stir all that much. And if you really want to, mix up some smoothies or things like that, or you want to chop up some things, it'd be a lot faster to do it with that. You don't need a lot of power all the time, but you need a little bit right now. For me, it's about tools. It's also about lighting. Yes, I have kerosene lamps and things like that, but they'll set things on fire. So it is about having some lighting. And it's also about having access to entertainment and or learning things like DVDs and CD players and what have you, because it'd be really nice. Now, are those things necessities? No. They are niceties, but boy, do they make your life a whole lot easier, faster, and it'll give you more free time to be helping other people and or spend your time gardening or teaching or other things like that. So a little bit of power. And there are some medical needs and what have you. We'll talk more about that. So I say there's some good cases for wanting to have some power. And then what can you afford comes into the other question. So that's why I would say, yeah, there's some good reasons for it, but I'll go into a little more depth in the future and the different ways that you do get some power and what they'll do for you, how long they will run, and things like that. So good question. I appreciate that. Bruce, did I see you on mute?
I did.
Yes.
One of the things I plan on using a little solar power is on communications.
Yeah.
Be able to reach out when the grid's down. Communications could be very bad. I mean, there might be radio stations that are on emergency power or whatever, but you can't reach out. You can only listen if you're running on batteries. I have ham radio equipment I fully expect to use with other ham radio people just to reach out and see what's going on. And then there are also, like you said, little tools. I have stupid things like an electric toothbrush. I would like to charge that up. I have electric rechargeable flashlights, so I'd like to have those. I have solar lights, and that's actually electricity. Those little yard lights that you get with a little tiny solar panel on the top and a light that turns on at night.
Mm-hmm.
I have several of those, and that's technically electricity in my book.
It is, yeah.
So
power.
It more there than you would imagine. I think the way to do it is to go ahead and take yourself off the grid for a day or two and tell me what happens. And until you actually do that, there'll be so many things that sneak out at you that I didn't think of that. I didn't think of this. I liked what you said about computer or look up some files or something like that. Now, whatever, you'd be surprised how connected we are there. Just until you go take it down and leave it down for a day or two, at least a weekend or something, it will shock you at all the things that you miss.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
And some of them are just conveniences. but some of them, they're real time savers, and they'll make your life much easier and better is what it comes down to. Terry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I sure can.
I finally figured out how to turn my microphone on.
Cool.
So, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know if I'm necessarily asking for an answer to this, but I we do own a solar setup. It's it's the Titan. I don't know if you're familiar with the Titan.
No.
0.0 energy, but anyway, it has a generator and it has two batteries. The size of I don't know, a box. But anyway, and we have it hooked up. It's on, the panels are small, but they're up on our roof, and my husband uses it to power his computer that he uses every day for work, and we've got a few other things that we use it for. It's a nice little handy thing to have, and it'll help us out. It'll give us some electricity. My issue with it is I want to take it all down and pack it up and hide it away somewhere so that it doesn't get ruined with the EMP. It is not connected to the grid. It's off grid. It's the size of something that would probably go in a cabin in the mountains or something like that. But anyway, I just worry about it. And I just think we ought to put it away so it doesn't get damaged. So I just wonder what your comment would be on that.
You're right. EMP will destroy it. But since it's a standalone unit like you have, and I'm very much in favor of those because they're portable and they're also more protectable. That would be my recommendation. I would agree with that. It should be one of the things what you do need to do is keep those batteries charged up, which depending on the unit, if you're able to charge it off of house current, then periodically every few months you would open it up enough so that you can keep those batteries topped off, because batteries do age, and what hurts batteries the most is taking them to complete discharge and storing them that way for a long time. Rechargeables don't like that generally. Now, the newer batteries, the lithium iron phosphate, they handle that a lot better, but still it'd be better to every 3 months, every 4 months, 6 months, something like that, just top off the batteries and then get everything disconnected. And yes, if there was an EMP attack that occurred on those 3 hours when you're charging the system, it could be fried. Well, you can only do the best you can do. So you're correct. And that's what I would do, because it being a standalone unit, it's protectable, it's hideable, it's portable. I'm very much in favor of that.
Thank you. That just settles what my worry and concern might be. So I guess I just think, I'm just gonna pay attention and see if I can guess when one of those might hit.
Yeah.
And hurry and take it down.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's the thing you won't be able to pull off. Now, if you're paying attention to space, those things could, by the way, if it's hooked up and it has a lot of antenna hanging out, meaning the wires from the panels that come into it, and then the wires that are running around in the house, even though they may be separate, a geomagnetic storm might do damage to it. It's less likely to for something that small, but again, if it has enough line out there, it could be damaged by the geomagnetic storm. But that's one that you can have an alert put on your computer and on your phone for a solar weather alert. When it gets to a certain level of space weather alert, then it'll send a trigger to you that says, okay, disconnect it and get the antennas down, and then you'll be okay. But you're not able to do that with EMP because it will be a sneak attack, bottom line.
Right.
So,
All right.
Randall, you're unmuted.
I have a question. This is the talk about smaller rechargeable batteries and smaller electronics. What is your take on the smallest or the biggest of these little appliances that will actually be affected by an EMP? I've heard some people say You know, the old incandescent flashlights are better because LEDs are the light emitting diodes, and the diode is an electronic component that could fry out. So how small can we go, or how big can we go? And these appliances or tools or rechargeables with maybe some circuitry in them that we should be worried about?
Well, I have an opinion about that. Now, as far as that little junction that's in well, lost the word, but you said it anyway. Sorry about that. Old guy that's had a stroke. You know, I forget words. The LED. Oh, I just have to laugh. It's all you can do. Otherwise, you get mad. The LEDs, an LED by itself that's not tied into circuitry, I think there's zero or so close to zero that'll hurt it or not, because it really, see, you take a look at what does an EMP do. EMP, and some of the latest numbers that I've seen is that when this lightning strike, so to speak, comes down, it may be up to 100,000 volts per square meter. Now that's 100,000 volts across that whole surface there, that you know, yard by yard piece of real estate. And so in order for you to get enough energy that would be picked up, you just have one little thin wire laid across that, or it could be a fat wire. Doesn't make any difference. That won't make any difference. That's the antenna that's going to be laid across that. And I can't do the physics to figure out how much let's say a yard long piece of wire would pick up. I imagine it's out there someplace, or you can find somebody to calculate. But that's not likely to pick up enough energy to fry something. So my guess is that if you have any kind of an antenna that is less than, or is no more than 3 feet long, a yard long, I think it'll probably be okay. Now, one of the questions you asked, which is really a legitimate one, I haven't seen anything written on this. If you have a piece of equipment that has a printed circuit board in it, you have all those little copper, you know, wires basically running around in there. Is that enough antenna? And the thing is, I don't know. And I haven't seen anybody talk about that directly. There may be some tests out there that have been done, but but by having things not connected to the power grid, having them off, and having things disassembled as much as you can. My battery pack that I have that goes with my cordless drill and the other things, it has some electronics in it also. It has a battery management system in it, so it has that. And then the drill itself has some electronics in it, some components in there. I'm thinking if I have not the battery installed in it, if I don't keep it installed that way, it's more likely to survive. One of the problems is the batteries that I have that are just sitting on the charger, they may be cooked. Not the battery. The battery won't be hurt, but the battery management system, maintenance system, is likely to be fried, so they're not going to work all that well. So it is a very good question. That's why a speculation on people have said, well, what about pacemakers? Well, some things have been written to say, yeah, it'll shut down all the pacemakers. My feeling is it probably won't shut down the pacemakers or your electronic watch, because I don't think there's enough antenna in them. However, you have to consider as though it would. So if there's something you say, no, this has to work, then I need to shield it. Now, like my computer, if it's not plugged in, it's unplugged, and is there enough circuitry in that it could be fried? Could be. Now, it's in this aluminum case, and if the case is covered, it's closed up in there, there might be enough shielding from that, particularly if it was grounded, that it might not make it through, because it's a all aluminum case on it, although there's some gaps and what have you. So there's a lot of I don't know about it. So if you take a look at something and say, I really need this to work, then you shield it as much as you can. And particularly if you get into a period of time where there's tensions escalating around the world and what have you, go like, okay, we're going to pack these things away, is what you do. So that's the best answer I can give you, except I don't think any LED will be fried by itself. If it's tied to a large circuit in there, it's likely to be, it could be cooked in that case.
Well, the reason I ask is because a friend of mine who I think knew a lot about this kind of stuff, he mentioned that if there's more than 12 square inches of metal case that is surrounding whatever it is, that would be enough to pick up enough energy to destroy some microelectronics, such as a large flashlight or a metal radio case or things like that. So that just got me worried. But like you said, if you didn't think it would be, but it's super vital. You have to prepare as one person. I like Masad Ayub is for firearms training. He's been a lifelong instructor and well respected. He mentioned something that says it's not the odds, it's the stakes. If the stakes are high, that it could be devastating. Then you need to, even though the odds are not very high, you have to take precautions for that because the stakes could be high.
Yeah, very true. And that's the way you have to look at it. When we talk about it, I'll help people understand, but you're going to have to do your own analysis to say what is critical that I need to protect. There's some things I would very much like to protect, but frankly, I can't afford to do them. This computer that I'm working off here, this MacBook Pro, that's right now it's kind of my life. It's my whole business and everything. I'd like to have a spare that has all the files on it that I update periodically, and or I have the thumb drives. Which, by the way, I think if you have a thumb drive sitting around on top of your counter, I don't think it'll be fried. It probably will not be. Or the hard drive that I have these digital solid state hard drives that are sitting out. I don't think if you have one that's disconnected, it's probably going to be okay. But where things are plugged in, it gets more and more likely it'll be fried because most of those circuits in there, those chips operate on under 3 volts. And you have some things that are working on fractions of a volt. Now, there's very, very low current in there. They're milliamps and microamps that they're working on. But it's the amount of voltage that you have that'll bring along with it some of that current. And if it gets to be very high, it'll fry them. So when you take a look at that 100,000 volts per square meter, how much of an antenna do I have to have? How many wire, how many square inches do I have to have that picks up 3 volts and plugs it into some of my equipment? Well, that'll tell you what's going to happen. So, yeah. But will everything be shut? And by the way, when we talk about EMP or I get into that a little bit, even if you have unprotected equipment that's plugged in, not everything's going to get fried. There'll be some things that, particularly if it's not plugged in, it's just sitting around, like a computer that's unplugged, and in your carry case and what have you. In some cases, it may be cooked. In other cases, it won't be because there's a lot of things that will affect the field density. The electrical flux that'll be right there because the fact that there's a big, huge thunderstorm and lots of rain and hail going on, that will have an effect on the amount that makes it through. It will reduce that somewhat. If you're in a canyon, you're going to get a little bit of shading that'll be in it, just like a radio station. When you go into a canyon, the radio station fades out. Then when you come out of the canyon, even though you're further away, it comes back on. You'll get some shading effect and things like that because it's a horizon event where it can be seen. That's why up 300 miles, you can see it all across this country. So there's a lot of things that are unknowns, but I tell people just plan as though everything you own and exists around you that's electronic, even though you've shielded, done your very best, just plan on it not working. And then if it does, hallelujah, life is good. Do the best you can. But be prepared to not be totally shocked that, gee, I thought it was going to be okay, but it's not. Well, get on with life and do what you need to do.
All right. One last thought. You said to share your thoughts, and while you were talking about, I'm not a pessimist, or I'm not, I'm a realist, and that just reminded me that the people that look at the whole world, half the world's light and half the world's dark, and there's lots of challenges and threats that are out there, and you can still be all positive and wanting to focus on moving that direction, but you have to be aware of all the things that are negative instead of being completely oblivious to it. By those people who avoid facing things about preparedness, they're going to be completely caught off guard, and they're the ones that are going to have the huge attitude shift and may not make it.
Yeah, that's why I talk about what I consider the truth about life. Well, that's the truth about life. Things happen, and they can happen a way you have no clue about they would happen, how bad they would be. But if you're prepared for the worst, and the worst is, nope, everything's dead, everything doesn't work, there's no power anyplace, nobody has any. Well, we human beings live for thousands of years without any electricity, and so we can go do that. It's real pain, I promise you. But you can do it if you want to, if you have a reason, if you have a purpose. you can do it. And that's one of the big things about this attitude. And we talk about you got to have a reason to do it, to put up with the pain and the struggle. Otherwise, it is just much easier to lay down and die. Anything else from anybody? Good questions. I appreciate the questions and comments. I appreciate you coming. It causes me to do these things. I only had the 5.5 hours to put this together, so it's not exactly the way that I wanted it, but I'll come back and clean some things up and or redo it in the future. I'm really hopeful of some things that are going on that are going to let me have more free time to research and teach and put things together, so that I'm highly encouraged. And I'll let you know when it really does happen. It'll be a thrill. We'll go away then, and I'll see you come Saturday. Now think about that. There's some other things you want to have covered in here, because I'll go through what my list is that I think that people need to know, and do my best to help you fill in those blanks that you're not getting from some of the other programs, and talk about some things that are not usually talked about. So thank you very much. Have yourself a good evening. I'll see you come Saturday and next week too. Good night.